So today we're going to learn the very basics of how to build a budget. Then we're going to go through a few extra layers you can add to tailor it to you. So a lot of people fail on their budget because in the first 3 months they try to make it either too complex or too restrictive and they just don't follow through. So we're going to go through a very simple version to start with. So we're going to do this in 5 separate layers. So the very first layer is the very basics of a budget. Write down what comes in and what goes out. Now, this is much better than having no budget at all, and it's something very simple and easy to do. You can just write down how much you're getting paid on your salary, listing all your monthly expenses, and it will tell you if you're overspending or if you have something left to invest. We're then going to add in an extra layer where we look at our annual expenditure so we can see how much we're really spending over the course of a year. And we also maybe add in a few extra categories and split it into fixed and variable costs. We're then going to start taking things a little bit further and we'll start looking at things like sinking funds. Now we use sinking funds for annual costs so that when it comes to paying for it, we're not then stuck in thinking, oh, I didn't save up for that. Layer 4 then looks at, well, what do we do if we do have extra money at the end of the month? What is the priority order for us and what we need to spend it on? And layer 5 is probably one of the most important parts of a budget, is to review it and adjust it. So at the end of every month or every few months, you want to come back to your budget and see, well, did I stick to my budget and did I stick to my targets? And what do I need to tweak to make it a little bit more realistic for me? Now you can stop at any of these layers. Having a layer 1 budget is better than having no budget at all. And I actually used to use a layer 1 budget for many years. It's simple and it's effective. So let's start with this layer 1 budget. All you need is either a spreadsheet, Google Sheet, or you can do this on pen and paper, which a lot of people prefer to do. So we just want to put, you can either do these side by side or you can do it top and bottom. We just put how much are we making every year from our salary and how much are all of our expenses. Now the key here really is to go through your list of expenses and really try to pick out absolutely everything you can. So we want to look at our rent, our council tax, but then also look at what subscriptions are you still paying for? Do you have any insurances? Do you have any extra costs? Things that maybe you had forgotten about. And we can see here, if we put through all of our expenses, we actually come back and say we're overspending on a typical month. So then we want to look through our expenses and say, well, is there anything in here that maybe we can reduce? Now, there are some things that you can't, such as your rent and your council tax, and probably your water and internet until it comes to changing that contract. So we want to be looking at the various expenses like groceries. We need to spend a little bit less there. Then we're just going to add one extra layer of complexity. So we're going to split things into more of a category. So we have our income up here, and it might be that actually your salary is not your only income. You might have a partner who's also making money, and you might get child benefits if you have children, and you might also have a small side hustle where you're making a little bit of money, selling your old clothes. And then we have our fixed costs. So these are the things that we can't really change. Subscriptions maybe as a variable cost because you can cancel things, but there are some subscriptions that we really want and need. So if we add in all of our fixed costs, we're then looking at the next category, which is essentials. So these are things that can change month on month, but we still need them to survive. So these are things like groceries, transport, if you have any children, childcare costs, clothing, and maybe any other essentials such as socializing, going out, going for a drink. And if we then put that all together, we see then how much we're left with. And we then want to look at, well, where do we put that money that we're left with? And you can have a general rule of how much you want to put into your savings and how much you want to put into an emergency fund or paying off certain debts. But the most important thing here is don't treat your savings as something that comes at the end of the month with whatever you have left. You should have an aim for how much you want to save, and that should be taken out as soon as your money comes in. So if you're getting paid £2,000 and you're trying to save £100 a month, as soon as that £2,000 hits your bank account, transfer that £100 into your savings. A general rule you might have heard people say is the 50-30-20 rule, which is 50% of your costs should be your needs, 30% are your wants, and 20% are your savings. Now this is not a blanket rule, it doesn't work for everybody. A lot of people maybe have to spend more than 50% on their needs. So I want to take it one step further and think about reasons that some people fall short on their budget. Now we're going to look at sinking funds here, as you can see on the screen. So sinking funds are costs that come up annually that maybe you don't think about until they arise in the month. So let's take an example for Christmas. A lot of people celebrate Christmas and they need a lot of money in the month of December or November to buy presents. And if you haven't planned ahead, you might get to November and think, oh my goodness, where am I going to get this money from? So the key here, we want to think about what are all of our annual expenses? How much do they cost? And how much does that mean I need to save for that every month? And you then need to work that into your budget. So we can see here from all of our sinking funds, we actually need £214 a month. So we need to make sure when we're writing our budget, that counts as an extra expense at the very bottom. So I'm interested to know what part of a budget catches you off guard and what makes you stop using a budget. Drop it in the comments. Now you may be thinking this spreadsheet looks too overwhelming and I can never build something like this and I can never follow something like this. Well, it doesn't have to. Now you can just tailor your budget to what suits you. If you do want this very specific budget, I'll put the link in the description. But really just starting off simple and taking control of your expenses is the most important step. So let's look at something that we call the money order. So let's say you do have extra money at the end of the month. Well, how do you actually spend that? So we want to set ourselves a priority list. So in this priority, we're going to say we want a starter emergency. And we usually put that at around £1,000. Now we know that anything can happen in life and you might need access to money very quickly. So we always want to have £1,000 and we want that to be in an easy access saving. And some people may swap 1 and 2 around, but the next thing we're going to talk about is a high interest debt. Now a lot of people have credit cards, overdrafts, payday loans that have a very high interest attached to them. Now we want to clear these as soon as possible because the interest being charged on these is actually accumulating faster than if you had that money in a savings account. The next step is we want to make sure we're paying into our pension and we want to get that employer match. So by statutory law, your employer has to match 3% if you put in 5% to your pension. Now this is a great long-term investment because you're already getting an extra 3% on your employer and that will continue to grow into retirement. Now it's important to know that pension rules have changed. Make sure you go and watch the video on my account about inheritance tax because pension now becomes part of your. We then want to try and accumulate a full emergency fund. So ideally you would have 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses saved up. Now again, anything in life can happen. You can lose your job, you can be made redundant. And it's always good to know that you have that buffer there just in case. And if all of that is covered, we then want to look at, well, how can we then invest our money? Now, ideally, you would start with your cash ISA contributions, or you might go for a stocks and shares ISA. But we really do want our money in an ISA to make sure that it's tax-free income. And if all of those things are covered, you may then consider an additional pension or a long-term investment. Now, layer 5, which is probably the most important part, and again, you don't need to do this on a very fancy spreadsheet like this. You can just do it on your very basics. But we want to come back and analyze our spending. So here we have a budget and we said how much we want to spend on each category every month, and that feeds into this summary tab. Now the summary tab also takes our actual expenditure, which we've entered for the past 5 months, every single thing that comes through the bank account. And we want to look at the difference. Well, usually the fixed costs should be very tight because we know how much we're spending but we need to come and look at our variable expenses. How good were we at estimating how much we actually spend? So we're saying that actually for our food and groceries, that's about right. Our transport is about right. But if we look at something like holiday and travel, now we thought we were going to spend £150, but we've actually spent £220 and we've overspent by £70. Now we need to look at that and say, was this just a one-off for this month where we actually did an extra trip? Or is that actually likely to continue for the following few months? And do we need to adjust the budget? And similarly, we put £60 as a budget for personal care, but we've only spent £20. So actually, do we need £60 a month or can we reduce that? And ideally, you would go through this month by month. So if we change this is for April, if we change this back to January, we can actually see we budgeted for £150 for holiday and travel and we didn't go anywhere. So it's just about coming and reviewing your monthly expenses and seeing, well, how much more could we possibly save? You also just want to keep your sinking fund. Let's say we're in May and we've been putting £50 a month aside for Christmas. So we should ideally have £250 in this account. We just want to keep these up to date so that we know where we're sitting and we know that we will meet that annual target. We then want to come back to our budget and say, well, how accurate is this? Do we need to change any of these? And then we'll just keep going through the months and making sure that we're sticking to it. Now, this should only take you about 15 or 20 minutes per month, but it's very, very important that you do. And ideally also, you want to have an annual review of how much you're spending on everything. I think that now when you look at something on a monthly basis or a one-off basis, you might think that it's not that much. But when you look at it on a grand scale of an annual or something, maybe I'm actually spending too much on subscriptions and I didn't really review. So it's great to have an annual. But again, it's just whatever works for you. So from this video, I want you to think about how many layers you need for your budget and what really works for most budget. And remember the 3 reasons that most budgets fail. Number 1, people make it too. Number 2, people don't. And number 3, people don't plan ahead for the predictable expenses such as. Now if this has helped you at all, please hit subscribe. I've got many more videos coming.